Hey everybody, my name is Erica B and I want to welcome you back to Beyond the Bump. I want to talk to you about a really special topic that's close to me. And today I'm going to discuss depression and anxiety throughout pregnancy, postpartum, just kind of to share my story with it. I know a lot of women who deal with postpartum depression, which I personally didn't deal with, but I did have um, depression pretty much throughout my second trimester of my pregnancy with my son. It probably started around 18 weeks pregnant. I had been throwing up everything, literally everything. I'd lost probably about 20 pounds. And for me, it really became noticeable once I started sleeping 18 hours at a time. I would just get up, go to the bathroom, come back, and keep sleeping. Um, I didn't really consider myself depressed. I had premenstrual dysphoric disorder before I was pregnant, years before I was pregnant, that I thought was resolved. And I had been on medication for that, just mild medication, um, not very consistently. And so I didn't think anything of it then, and I didn't relate it to um, hormonal issues, or I didn't think I was going to have any other issues with any type of mental health problems. So it really kind of shocked me, and I was in a great deal of denial when I started just being sad, being weepy, losing interest in activities that I used to want to do. I'm already pretty much a homebody, so it didn't take much to be like, I really don't want to do this. I'm canceling this plan. Canceling every plan. I started canceling all the plans, praying that other people would cancel plans first so I didn't have to feel bad about it. And then, like I said, the sleeping. I would start sleeping a lot because I was working 12-hour shifts as a nurse. And I would work 3 to 4 in a row, which is my normal, typical thing, especially when I would work at night and I'd come home and sleep during the day. No big deal. But it got to the point where I would work my 3 or 4 in a row and I'd come home and go to sleep. And then I'd be in bed for 3 or 4 days until I had to go back to work. So it was basically bare minimum. You have to get up. You have to do this. You have to go to the doctor or to the midwife or to whomever. Like, obligations, I would do my best to keep. But that was it. And I would kind of put a fake smile on and go to work, and nobody at work knew anything at all was wrong. Until well after my son was born, pretty much. And I felt alone. I could be in a room full of people and I felt alone. I felt ashamed because, you know, I wanted this child. My husband and I tried for this child. Didn't have to try very hard. It was great. And to get pregnant really quickly, excuse me. Sorry, my child is at the door. So I would go to work and screw my fake smile on and entertain people and be happy and pretty convincing, I think, because once people found out later on that I had been depressed pretty much for the second trimester, they were kind of in shock. But the feelings I felt, guilt, shame, I felt like God would think I'm ungrateful because you wanted this, you wanted to be pregnant, and now look how you're acting, look how you're being. I felt really strange because this is supposed to be the happiest time of your life. And there are so many people who struggle with being pregnant, maintaining a pregnancy. You know, you should definitely be happy. It's uncomplicated pregnancy, no issues. Like, as far as if you've kept up with me, I didn't have any blood pressure issues until really late in my pregnancy. So this was like a pretty decent low risk pregnancy, except for the fact that I'd thrown up my guts pretty much the first 4 months. It got really kind of scary, not even for me, because I was just kind of like, okay, this must just be how it is. This is just me. Something's wrong with me. But I'm not thinking that this has to do with chemicals or hormones or depression or anything like that. Until one day I was coming from church, and I asked my husband, who had been through his own set of mental health issues in his teenage years, I said, you know, is it normal to occasionally have to verify with yourself that you don't feel like harming yourself? And he was like, what? I said, at work, I have to ask every woman who comes through the door, have you ever had any thoughts of harming yourself or anyone else, including your unborn child? And the answer for me is always no, but I want to know if that's normal. Have you ever had to stop and literally ask yourself that? And he was like, having had a history of being suicidal, he was like, yeah, but only at the beginning of becoming suicidal. And so that really hit me hard. And when I said that to him, it hit him hard because he basically made me go see my midwife the next day. Because I would cry nonstop at the drop of a hat. Like, just everything made me cry. But I'm a pretty emotional person, and I pretty much cry for everything, even still, like right now. Frustrated, I cry. If I'm mad, I cry. If I'm sad, I cry. If I'm happy, I cry. It's pretty much just my go-to emotional outlet. And so that didn't really change anything. And people I would ask would be, like, you need to drink more water. You need to take a walk. You need to pray about it. You need to, whatever. And it just didn't seem to work. The things that they were saying, it's like, okay, it is just me. Something is just wrong with me. And if you've ever felt like that, I want to let you know that number one, it's not necessarily you. It's probably not you. And also, I want to let you know that you are not alone. So the guilt and the shame and the pressure to maintain a happy face can be enough to really overwhelm someone. It definitely overwhelmed me. I didn't want people asking me questions. I didn't want people knowing that I was depressed once I realized that this is really what's happening. I didn't want anybody to find out. So I would just act normal. And so it took somebody really coming to me after I posted something really vague on Facebook and saying, they messaged me. It was a friend from nursing school. And she said, are you okay? And I was just kind of like, I really don't remember exactly what I was like, but I was probably something like, yeah, oh, hey, small talk. How's it going? How have you been? How's life been? I'm just trying to get ready for this baby and this and that. And she started kind of confiding in me little bits at a time that basically she had been where I was. And she said, there's all this information about postpartum depression, but nobody really talks about being depressed or having anxiety, which is actually a part of the umbrella of depression, which people don't know. I didn't know that. She said nobody talks about all that while you're pregnant. And so we would have little conversations, and she would check on me every now and then. It wasn't like an overbearing, tell me what you did today, tell me how you feel today. It was very just casual, like, let me share this with you. And when she would share it with me, and I would be able to be like, that's what I'm thinking, or that's how I'm feeling. It was just nice to figure out that you weren't alone. Because the people that I had talked to before included friends, my mom actually, and they didn't get it. And that's okay, because it's not even that I felt bad that they didn't get it, because I wouldn't want anybody who knows, for those of us who know what it's like to be depressed, I don't want my mom to know what that's like. So when I would talk to her about it, and I'd say, literally, Mom, it feels like I wake up every day, because it wouldn't necessarily be morning since I worked at night. I wake up every day and I go to my own funeral. I am mourning the loss of myself. And I don't know why. I really don't know why. And so I told her, I said, I'm not thinking about harming myself. I don't think about hurting my child. I have to sometimes talk to myself about it, though, just to be like, hey girl, you good? Because we still got some time that we got to deal with this. And I know it's dark, but are we okay? We being me, myself, and I, and Ellis, my son. And every time it'd be like, we're hanging in there. We're making it. These nonchalant answers that I would give myself and be like, this is just what pregnant girls obviously feel like. And so to talk to people and be like, this is what you felt like, right? And have them be like, no, something's wrong with you, which nobody outright said, but we, people who deal with this, some of us internalize every answer as being very critical, very personal. Like, no, something's wrong with you, even though they weren't saying those things. They were just like, I really can't relate. And I appreciate people who don't pretend to relate to things that they have no clue about, because if you don't know, you don't know. And once again, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So for me, it was really tough to just be like, it's almost an out of body experience where you watch yourself in bed and you're like, okay, Erica, we gotta go. We need to get groceries, or we need to cook, or we need to clean. We need to let's take a bubble bath, or let's get out of the house. Let's go take a walk. And you're talking to yourself about it, but you can't make yourself move because this weight that is sitting on you is like 1,000,000 pounds. It's like elephants are sitting on you and you can't move. You're paralyzed. That's how I felt. And everybody who feels mental health issues is not going to have the same story, but I wanted to share mine with you guys because if somebody hadn't shared theirs with me, I would not have felt the empowerment that I did from her sharing her story. I mean, down to exactly how she felt, down to there were days when she didn't bathe and she's confiding this in me. Like, some days it was too hard to get up and wash my behind. It was too hard for a whole day's work to be in bed and be off of work. It was too hard. I could not make myself do it. And I have to, assume for people who've never felt like that, because I have felt like that, that sounds really silly. It has to sound like you couldn't get up and take a shower. Something really must be wrong with you. And the answer is yes. Something was wrong with us. That should not be a reason that I can't make myself shower. That I can't be like, girl, get your funky butt up. You have worked for the last 4 days. But I promise y'all, that's how bad it got. And I don't consider myself a severe case. I never was suicidal. I've never been suicidal. Beyond the ask the questions to myself, I never thought about any type of harm. I just completely shut down. I shut down socially. I shut down as far as self-care went. I took my prenatal vitamins. I took care of my pregnancy. I ate what I could eat and keep down. But as far as just taking care to, oh, I'm going to go get my nails done, or oh, I'm going to go get my hair done, pamper myself, there was none of that. And so it was really hard for me. It was really hard for my husband to watch because I basically isolated myself from him as well. And knowing that he had been through something pretty similar earlier in life, once he chimed in and was like, you sound like me, I was able to kind of start opening up to him and being like, I don't know why I feel like this. Or just going to him crying. Because in the beginning, I couldn't even make words to make sense of it all. So I would just go to him crying and he'd be like, babe, what's wrong? And I'd be like, I really don't know. And he got to the point where he was so good at understanding whether there was a real physical problem or if it was just that I was in a dark place. And he was the only one who really could talk me off of that irrational roller coaster because it was just so up and down. And so once he had me make my appointment with my midwife, I was probably about 30 weeks pregnant at that point, and we went to her. And I had worked with her so many times, like with her patients and things like that. Um, I didn't have to ask for much. I just had to say, hey, I need something. I think it's time for some meds, basically. Um, And she just kind of handed me a list and said, okay, tell me what you want. So anyways, so my midwife handed me a list of medications. It had like a brief description of each one on there. And she was kind of like, just let me know what you want. Just let me know what you need. And we'll do whatever you need to do. And so for someone who is a patient who doesn't know much about, the background of labor and delivery or these medications, she wouldn't have done that. So because I already knew, I just needed somebody to say it's okay to do what you need to do for yourself. So she did exactly that, and it was very empowering. So I chose a prescription. I chose a medication, and I texted her and I said, I think I'm going to try the Zoloft. It's a really common one given for major depressive disorder in pregnancy. A lot of our patients that are on something are typically on Zoloft. Not that should deter you if you're on something else, but it's one that I see really commonly in pregnant women. So I had her to call out or send in a prescription for that, and I picked it up and I held the bottle and I just looked at it. And I said, it was kind of almost like a placebo effect where it's like I instantly felt better. But I think what happened was I knew that if I needed to do it, I had it at my fingertips. It wasn't a question of let me make an appointment and then let me go see someone. Like, I had done all those other steps and I had this medicine available to me. And for me, that was an out. So I knew that I could have that if I needed it. So I had it on my dresser. I left it there, and I ended up never using it. I ended up never ever taking it. And so I didn't know kind of how to feel about that at first. Like, okay, well, maybe it was all in my head. But the point is having somebody to validate what you feel. And she kind of was very like, you don't have to tell me anything that you don't want to tell me, but you also don't have to justify this. If you're telling me that you're having these XYZ symptoms, then that warrants you taking something if that's the route you feel you need to go. And so it was just very, like I said, she was very open, she was very empowering, and so I really appreciated her for that. But as I kept going through my pregnancy, I eventually started to feel better. And part of it, I think, was just the fact that, number one, I found somebody who would listen and had been there to tell me, hey, you're not alone, and my friend that messaged me. And then I found somebody else who was like, here's an option if you need it. So just to have that option, I think, took so much weight off of my shoulders. I think that it was bad enough that I knew so much about labor and delivery and all the positives about it, but also a lot of the negatives and outcome issues and things that can happen and go wrong. And I kind of am that anxious person who just waits for something bad to happen. But I didn't know that until then. So it was kind of an eye-opener. So I kept going throughout my pregnancy. I started to feel a lot better. I started to feel more like myself, and, had a baby, went home, didn't have any postpartum depression. There's a scale that nurses and providers do when you go to your follow-up appointments. They're actually supposed to be doing it nationally now before you're even discharged home with your baby. And it's supposed to be a depression scale. There are different types. My hospital uses one called the Edinburgh, and so did my clinic. And so every time I would show up, I would get this piece of paper and I'd have to answer these questions. And if you scored higher than a 10, for example, then you were supposed to have something happen. So 10 basically was like, you are showing signs that you are depressed. You are showing signs that you might be unsafe. And I took the test several times because of my blood pressure issues. So I had follow-ups pretty much every week. And I scored a 9 3 times. For 3 weeks in a row, I scored a 9, which was crazy because I felt so much better. I mean, just leaps and bounds better. And so I wondered to myself, in hindsight, it's like, what would I have scored if I were still in that dark place that I was in during my pregnancy. It was really crazy. It was kind of awful to think of, but at the same time, it's like, but I feel good. I'm doing what I need to do to take care of my child. I'm going to all my follow-up appointments, and he had to have quite a few himself, so I was knocking that out. Now, was having a new baby hard, especially for me as a first-time mom? Yes, it was. Even with a good support system, it was really hard. And some of that is normal. Like, some of that is just, you've never done this before, it's going to be hard. But if you ever feel like you have to stop and ask yourself, am I going to hurt my child? Am I going to hurt myself? Let somebody know. Have somebody come over and sit with you. Have somebody come over and watch the child so you can rest. Have somebody come over and just be there, so that, number one, you have an option as far as childcare, and number two, you have an option as far as, I need to tell somebody that I'm not okay. Because moms are getting discharged home and they're thinking that they're okay, or they're thinking they can handle it, or they're not thinking they're okay and they're just thinking, I don't have a choice. And heartbreaking things are happening. So I want you to know, if you feel anything like I felt in this story, you are not alone. You don't have to be alone, even if you feel like you do, that you deserve it, that you're ashamed of yourself, that you're guilty, that you didn't want the pregnancy, whether you wanted the pregnancy, whether you considered alternative methods of delivery, whether you considered giving your baby up for adoption. None of that matters, and none of that means that you deserve to feel like that. You didn't do anything. You couldn't have done anything to deserve to feel like that. I wouldn't wish that feeling on my worst enemy. And I wanted to just tell somebody that it can be okay. Find some resources. Call the hospital that discharged you and say, hey, I'm feeling XYZ. It is not to get you in trouble. It is not to get your child taken away from you. It is to get you the help that you need to process life that's just changed drastically, and to be able to take care of yourself so that you can take care of your family and your new baby. So I thankfully did not get postpartum depression. I did not have to continue. I didn't ever have to take that medicine. I have since been on meds for depression and anxiety. And that's another thing I didn't realize, is that overprotective, where are you taking my baby, paranoid anxiety can be, not necessarily is, but it can be a part of postpartum depression. It doesn't always look like, oh, I'm sad, I'm tired, I'm weepy, I've lost interest. It can be hypervigilance. It can be, really overbearing, like worried about this child to the point where you don't sleep even when you could sleep. You don't take care of yourself. You're not eating. You're not drinking. You're so worried about the baby that you're not able to function outside of what you're doing for this baby. And the quality of care that you give when you don't sleep, when you don't take care of yourself, it declines very quickly, because you have to take care of yourself in order to take care of your baby. So just know that anxiety and depression, it looks different for all of us, or, all of us who have it. For me, I saw some stuff while I was at work that, I couldn't unsee. And I was unable to buy anything for our child until I was 24 weeks pregnant. So 24 weeks pregnant is what we call viability, the age of viability. It's when we expect a newborn to be able to function outside of the womb. Now, you'll still be in intensive care, but before that, we call it pre-viable or non-viable. And I obviously know that, and I know far too much information about all of that. And so I wasn't convinced that my child would carry. And so I was paralyzed to the point where I could not buy anything for him. Like, people would be like, have you bought a crib? I haven't bought a diaper, because I don't know that he's going to be here. I don't know that I trust myself enough to get him here safely. And all of that is irrational, so far irrational, because even in the case where our babies don't get to come home with us for whatever the case may be, there's still nothing that we do about that. There's nothing that we should blame ourselves for in that process. So for me to even be like, I don't believe that I'm strong enough, or I don't believe that I'm capable enough, or I'm not mother material, it was all irrational. It is all irrational. So if that sounds like you, that's also a time where you need to talk to somebody. Talk to somebody you trust. Talk to somebody who you feel like may have been there. If people don't understand, that's okay. Remember that you don't want somebody else to understand what you're going through, but you still need to find somebody who does, or who is trained to help you, basically. So if you go to a doctor and you say, I really feel like I want a psych consult, I considered that. That was where we were kind of going if it didn't resolve, was like, you can take this medicine, or you can get a psychiatrist to see you and talk to you and go to therapy. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that either. We all come with our own baggage. We all come with our own history and our past and our present. And sometimes the future just doesn't feel like it's better. And so if you need therapy, go talk to somebody. Go find a therapist that you trust. Everything that you talk to them about is kept confidential, barring any type of crimes or anything. So I urge you, if you feel like I wish I would have gotten therapy. I found therapy in friends, but everybody doesn't feel comfortable talking to people, especially either strangers or friends or family members. And I completely get that, but find someone to talk to. After I had my son, it took me about probably 2 or 3 years to get past the PTSD from just the darkness, just that trauma of, feeling like I was robbed of the joy of being pregnant because of my mental health. And so I started eventually journaling about it. I started really just casually. And then one day I really got to a point where it was really a breakthrough, where I was able to write out and talk about how I would sing to my belly these songs where I would just pray that he makes it. Or I would, where I didn't buy clothes for him. I didn't buy diapers for him. I didn't register for anything. I didn't talk really about my pregnancy except for when I was being fake at work. Because I just was like, I don't want to make memories in case I don't get to make memories. And so that was very real for me. That was, seeing friends have miscarriages, seeing friends have babies that are born sleeping, seeing friends that just deal with things that you feel like, if that happened to them, then why would I deserve to have a healthy baby? And that's heartbreaking. All of those thoughts are very heartbreaking, because you can't make it logical. You can't put yourself up against other people and saying like, oh, I don't deserve this because this happened to them. I deserve to have something bad happen if that happened to them and they're such good people. And I know a lot of great people that have gone through some really crappy things, and that doesn't make it okay that they went through it, but that also doesn't mean that I have to live my life in a way that I'm always ashamed, that I'm always feeling guilt, that I'm always just like not able to live the life that I've been given. So I was finally able to get that out and talk about it to pretty much anybody and share my story. And I want to thank anybody who has been a part of that journey for me, with me, that I've told, who's listened to me vent and ramble on and on and on and on and on at 2 a.m. You have no idea how much that has helped me to heal. It has definitely started the healing process, which is still not over. 4 years later, it's still a process. It's still painful to talk about. And the outcome was not a bad outcome. And my son is almost 4 years old and he's happy and healthy. He is a little anxious, and that can be because of an anxious mom. So I blame myself for that. It's like, oh, if I weren't so anxious, he wouldn't be anxious. It's a whole deal. It's a thing. And if you know about it, if you understand what I'm talking about, then you get it. If you don't, I pray you never have to get, and I pray you never have to understand what I'm talking about, because it can be very miserable. It can be very numbing. It can be very paralyzing, and just, it can ruin a day. It can sap the joy out of your world, and that shouldn't be something you have to deal with. It shouldn't be something any of us do, but some of us do. So I was lucky enough not to get postpartum depression at all. Like I said, I was given that scale where I felt okay, but I was still scoring pretty high on that scale to say you still have some issues. And so, you know, my midwife would check on me. Once I had to switch away from her because I was delivered, I was put back on some medication shortly after, I would say probably 2 years ago. So he was 2 years old. I was put on some meds for a little bit, and I didn't like the way it made me feel. I didn't feel like it worked fast enough. And so I stopped taking those also. So I'm always on the lookout for just things that helps to stabilize a mood. I'm always on the lookout for holistic things like exercise and drinking your water and stuff like that. Because now that I'm not pregnant, I can at least take that part out of, like, the logical part of this is baby related, I can take out of. And I find that what I do for myself, even if I have to make myself do it, it does help me to keep my mood stable and keep my anxiety at bay. And so just knowing your triggers and trying to figure out who causes these things, because if there are people that are causing you to be anxious, then you don't need to be around those people. But sometimes that can't be helped, and I definitely understand that, and I have people like that in my life. So, you know, it's just knowing and trying to prepare yourself, and knowing that you're not alone. You are not alone. Right now I'm taking an amino acid called L-theanine. Personally, it works for me. Disclaimer, I am not your doctor. So if you're pregnant, you definitely need to talk to your doctor before you take any type of supplement or medication that has to do with anxiety, depression, mental health issues. If you're not pregnant, you still need to talk to your doctor, because I'm not that person. But for me, I take something called L-theanine. I got it at Sprouts, which is like a Whole Foods. And it's an amino acid that's found in green tea, which is calming. It was in a supplement that I had bought, like a branded supplement that I bought. And so I did the research on the ingredients in that supplement and found this one. And so I find that it helps to keep me stable. Not necessarily the happiest on my bad days, but it keeps me from being the saddest on my bad days or the darkest days. And so I implore you to find something that works for you. Find a regimen, find a support group, find a therapist, whatever you need. Get help if you need help. There's nothing wrong with needing help. And the stigma behind depression and anxiety is so much less than it used to be, but I am interested in continuing to push it to where we can all just sit around and talk about it. If you ever need to reach out to me, my email address will never change. You know, reach out. Comment your email and have me email you. I don't care. Just get my attention. I'm happy to listen to your vent. I'm happy to listen to your story. I'm not going to go sharing it with anybody, because I understand that having somebody, that one person that you trust, can be pivotal. It can change your entire life. And that person, those people who have shared their stories with me, have changed my life. It changed my outlook on future pregnancies, because at one point I was like, absolutely not. Just because of that was enough to be like, I never want to feel like that again. I never want to have to endure that again. But now I feel so empowered to try again. So that if we do end up pregnant again, I know what to look for. It still might be hard, but at least I'm not going to be silent about it. I'm going to be very loud about it, pretty obnoxious about it, until I get the help I need, if I end up needing help. So with that said, I hope that you got something out of this episode. Like I said, it's one that's really close to me, something I didn't expect to have an issue with, but it kind of really crippled me as far as my pregnancy went. And I just wanted to, like I said, share with you that if you feel any of these things, that you are not by yourself. So once again, this has been Beyond the Bump, and I'm Erica B.